Hello and welcome to the show. We call this Molotsky on Money. What's the show all about? Well, the clues are in the title. We'll be discussing money, specifically investment strategies, taxes, estate planning, insurance, and many other topics, all of it designed to help you and your family improve your overall financial picture. The Molotsky part of our title comes from our panel. Their name is Molotsky. Each week, we'll have Stan Molotsky, president and founder of the SHM Financial Group, as well as Lee Molotsky, vice president of the SHM Financial Group. Stay tuned because we have valuable information on tonight's show that we hope everyone can benefit from. And as we always like to say, Stan, tonight's show is certainly no exception.
No, it isn't.
You probably get this question. We do a radio show every week and we get this question often, and I know you probably get it 100 times a day. Like, what's the best thing for me to do with my money? I mean, and that's such a broad question, but people do ask it of you all the time, don't they?
Well, because, and the same people ask the same question ongoing because different times require people to do different things. Different times not only in the market cycles, but different times within their own cycle. You know, based on their particular economic situation, based on their health, based on what they're trying to do and accomplish with their money. And then you look at the economic cycle to determine whether you should be more in the stock market, less in the stock market, more in fixed things, more in tax-free or tax-deferred things based on one's tax bracket. So it's an ongoing question, and it's great for us because the situations keep changing, and therefore the client has to have the ability to adjust and change along with what's going on.
And Lee, I guess you get that question too all the time. You get that in the supermarket, right? I saw you on television. What's that? Is that a good investment? So how do you answer that question?
I really think today it's more about where are you in the family life cycle than what to do with the money. We need to really understand where the person is, so what their real needs are first before we figure out which investment makes sense. But tonight we'll talk a little bit about really the features of some of the investment vehicles that someone in their cycle might want to consider.
I remember years ago, everybody was doing this, and you probably remember this, Stan. Maybe it's a little before your time, Lee. Everybody was into this money market fund that was paying 17%. This was probably the early 80s.
Early 80s.
But remember, inflation was 23%.
That's right.
So it was like everybody said, you got to do that, you got to do that. And everybody flocked to that. And this company all of a sudden was famous out of nowhere.
It was called the Delaware Investment Fund.
I remember that.
The Delaware Funds, yes.
But again, that wasn't so great even then, because if inflation's 23 and you're getting 17, you're still behind the eight ball, right?
You have to remember the inflation, yes, that's true. But you have to remember that not everybody's inflation cycle is the same. Based on, again, like Lee said, where you are within your own cycle determines what your inflation cycle is. If you're getting ready to pay for college today, you're in a high inflation cycle. If you're totally retired and your home is paid for and you have no medical expenses, which is rare, then you're in a different kind of inflation cycle. So it depends on where you are and what kind of situation you're in determines what your cycle is inflationary-wise.
Well, we're going to try to help you sort it out tonight. We're calling this show Comparison of Investment Features, what's good, what's not so good, and what's kind of in between. So we're going to start by really giving you one by one some of the differences, some of the variables to try to help you sort this out. But as always, you need people like Stan and Lee to really help you. But here's our first one. Is there always a 100% guarantee of principal and at all times regardless of holding periods? And these are 4 different things, Stan. Could you explain this for us?
Well, basically you have the certificate of deposit. And if you would leave that graphic up there, then we can, refer to that.
Right.
But if you look at the certificate of deposit, it's an FDIC insured piece of paper. So yes, your principal is always protected as long as it's an FDIC insured piece of paper. In a tax-free bond, no. Your principal is not guaranteed because it will fluctuate based on interest rate environment. And the same thing with a corporate bond. As interest rates go up, the value of that bond can go down. The same thing with a tax-free bond. A deferred annuity, and here we're referring to a fixed interest-bearing deferred annuity contract. It's guaranteed by the issuing company. So it also cannot fluctuate in value, just like the certificate of deposit. So your principal is protected and you have no fluctuation like you do with the tax-free or the corporate bond.
As always, Lee, do you try to help people sort out what's right for them based on their particular situation, as you alluded to earlier? So if they say, oh, I want a guarantee, but really it's not appropriate for them, how do you handle something like that?
Oh, whether the guarantee is appropriate for them or not is really based upon their own individual set of circumstances, their own goals and objectives, their own tax bracket, and really what the money is earmarked for. So if the individual wants principal protection or guarantees, then that's what they should have. Far be it from us to tell them what to do. We can give them guidance as to what is available out there today in the marketplace as to what's principal protected and what's not, but that's their decision ultimately.
I mean, the exciting part about this business, as far as I'm concerned, is the constant innovation of different kinds of things that are available to people to, in turn, satisfy what their goals and objectives and needs are. Our job as an independent entity that has no particular product line is to constantly look for different things that make the most sense for clients and introduce those things to them so that they can supplement what they already know to do the best thing they can at that particular time in their economic cycle.
As you say, things constantly change.
That's the beauty of it all.
Your wife reminds you of that all the time.
Yes, she
you say
does.
that, right? Okay, so she's reminding you now as,
Yes, she
as
is.
we're watching this.
That's
okay,
right.
number two, this is as we continue with our comparison of investment features. Is the principal free of risk due to money market fluctuations? Lee, you want to kind of walk us through this one?
Sure. Simplistically, I'm not sure what the question really means, but money market fluctuations, money markets are just instruments available through a bank. So I think what that means is probably interest rate fluctuations, but let's talk about money market / interest rate fluctuations. A certificate of deposit principal is fixed, as it says up there. Municipal bonds, the principal is not fixed based upon interest rate fluctuations. Corporate bonds, the principal is not fixed based upon interest rate or money market fluctuations. And in a fixed deferred annuity, the principal is fixed. In a variable annuity style contract, the principal does vary in value. So I would put a little asterisk next to the last column. In a fixed deposit, in a fixed tax deferred annuity, the principal is fixed. In a variable annuity, the principal varies in value.
And, you know, the question normally that you would ask us at that point
Right.
is, well, which of these people own? And of course the answer is, it all depends on, again, like Lee pointed out, what they are, their goals and objectives, and where they are in their particular cycle as to which combination of those things, if those things at all, should they have. Maybe
Okay.
they should be totally into the stock market or something else.
Okay, we're coming up on a break, but can we show that last one real quick, Justin? I have a question about that, and my question is, it says here, is the principal free of risk due to money market fluctuations? If a client says to you, I want risk-free, do they necessarily then go to a CD and a deferred annuity and nothing else?
No. I mean, there are variables to that, but
Okay.
the choice between the two may make the most sense for most people. And some want the FDIC insurance coverage. That's where they should go. Some aren't concerned to that. They're comfortable with the guarantees of a major insurance carrier, and therefore they have that guarantee. And then they have the deferral and the tax liability that they do not have with a certificate of deposit unless it's part of an IRA account.
You know, right after the break, we'll talk about what people think is a safe deposit and what really is not, and we'll talk about how that pertains to today's economy.
You're doing well, leading me right into the break here. That's pretty good. So
I'm attempting to.
If I ever have laryngitis, you can fill in. More to talk about here on the show. It's Molotsky on Money. We're here every week at this time discussing a variety of issues. Of course, always all of it financial in nature. With Stan and Lee Molotsky, I'm your host, John DeMasi. We're coming back. More of this edition of Molotsky on Money after these words. Don't go away.
Since 1958, the SHM Financial Group has been providing sound financial insights and strategies for people just like you. Founded by Stan Molotsky, The SHM Financial Group believes in safety, security, and preservation of principal. For more information on how the SHM Financial Group can help you, contact them at 1-800-MONEY-SHM. That's 1-800-666-3974, or visit them at shmfinancial.com. Call us to discuss the reverse mortgage concept. If you should decide to proceed, you're required to go through a 60-minute phone or office interview. We will provide you with a list of HUD counselors you can call who will provide you with the counseling. Call us at 1-855-HUD-REVERSE. That's 1-855-483-7383.
Welcome back to Molotsky on Money with Stan and Lee Molotsky. I'm your host, John DeMasi. As always, we put the number up on the screen from time to time if you'd like to call Stan or Lee and discuss anything with them. You want to email them, you want to go to their website, feel free to do that. They're always happy to talk to you, especially if you tell them you watched us right here on Molotsky on Money. Tonight we are talking about comparison of investment features, and so far we've gone over a couple of them. We have a lot more, so we're going to get right into it as we move along here. This is the interest free of current income taxes. Stan, you want to go through this for us?
Well, normally a certificate of deposit, unless it's held in a retirement account, an IRA type account, you are taxed on that interest. Whether you reinvest it or not, you would get a 1099 on the interest on a certificate of deposit. On a tax-free bond, currently you are not taxed on the interest on a tax-free bond or a tax-free bond mutual fund. A corporate bond is a taxable interest-bearing piece of paper, again, unless it's in an IRA, which is a retirement non-taxable account. And a deferred annuity, there is no tax on the money as it accumulates, and when the money comes out, then you have a taxable event, but as it accumulates, there is no tax on that deposit.
If a person, back to a similar question that I asked you earlier, if a person says to you, I don't want to pay taxes, so do they go to those investments like the tax deferred or
the
something
tax-free?
like that, or the tax free?
Yes, they can, but again, it's a matter of, do they want to pay taxes now, or do they want to pay taxes in the future, or do they not want to pay taxes at all? That depends then again on which of the particular programs you use. If they don't ever want to pay taxes, then the tax-free bond vehicle makes sense. The only problem with that is, as interest rates go up, the value of that tax-free bond will deteriorate. So it's a matter of balancing that all out with time horizon, objectives, goals, risk tolerance, and coming out with a mix of different things that makes the most sense.
And Lee, it seems to me that not one thing gives you everything you need, which is why you always say a mixture of.
Almost.
Right.
There is something called a Roth IRA that, in my mind, today is probably one of the greatest tools an individual can use, and it is tax-free forever and a day if properly structured. So you can use inside the Roth IRA container, so to speak, whatever instruments you want to use. The only thing you don't want to use necessarily is the tax-free bond fund. It's really tax-free bond or tax-free bond fund, really not necessary to wear an umbrella inside or use an umbrella inside the building here, so to speak.
Okay, continuing with our comparison of investment features here on Molotsky on Money. This is the interest rate compounded and reinvested automatically with no current income taxes or sales charges? Back to the no current taxes, which I guess a lot of us like, Stan.
Well, again, with the certificate of deposit or a tax-free bond or a corporate bond, the interest rate is compounded, but on a tax-free bond, unless it's a tax-free bond fund, you can't reinvest that interest unless you have a substantial amount of tax-free bonds. Then you're buying additional bonds. You normally cannot buy that same bond again unless it's through a mutual fund, and the same thing would apply to a corporate bond. And a certificate of deposit, normally you cannot reinvest that interest. You have to take that and then buy a different certificate of deposit. With a deferred annuity, you can reinvest that money and it can compound, and there's no tax obligation in that particular vehicle until such time as the money comes out. So it can be forever and a day that money can in turn be compounding on a non-taxable basis.
Okay, moving right along here, as we have a lot to show you tonight on the program. Is the interest rate subject to change, thus comparing favorably with future market rates? Lee?
Simplistically, across the board, start with a certificate of deposit. The answer is no. Is interest rate subject to change? The answer is no. If you buy a 5-year CD at 2% today, assuming you could find that, that's the interest rate, period, so it doesn't change. Municipal bond, the answer is no. Interest rate, whatever it is, when you purchase that municipal bond is what it is during the life of the bond. Corporate bond, the same thing. On a deferred annuity, the interest rate can change, and in today's world, in a low interest rate environment that we're in today, you want that to be able to change.
It seems to me so far, as we look at everything, as we go down the list, the deferred annuity compares favorably to every situation.
Not all, but many.
But in every question here, it's always been a positive. So does that make this, again, I already probably know your answer, but does that make this the best investment vehicle?
No best.
Okay.
It has to be tied into what the person is looking to accomplish. And what the person has to look at, who is ever presenting to them options, they must have all the options. They can't be locked into a specific product line and that's all they can offer. They have to be able to offer a variety of different things. I mean, getting back to the certificate of deposit with the fixed interest rate, there are different marketing things that are being introduced today because of the interest rate environment that will allow people to bump up their interest rate on the certificate of deposit once or twice during that 5 or 7 year certificate of deposit. There are different institutions offering that, but it's rare. It's not the normal thing. With the deferred annuity, you have a floor, but as interest rates go up, then the interest rate on that deferred annuity will automatically go up in most cases.
But it is one of the...
It is one of the interesting tools that people have to take a look at and compare it to the other things, which is what we're trying to do tonight, to make people aware that there are different choices and their job is to pick the one with their advisor that makes the most sense.
All right, comparison of investment features, that's what we're talking about tonight. This one is there a provision to provide a guaranteed lifetime income with additional tax advantages?
Well, the only one that does do that is the deferred annuity. I mean, you can, in effect, make that deposit, and you can, in turn, convert some of it or all of it to a payment where you could get an income for a specific period of time or for your lifetime. You can't do that with a certificate of deposit. You can't do that with a tax-free bond, and you certainly can't do that with a corporate bond. So there is the advantage at some point to be able to turn that on to give yourself that guaranteed income if that's what you're electing to do.
In today's environment, many people, when they come to us, besides saying, what's the best thing I should be doing today, we turn around and ask the question of, what is your number one and number two main concern? What are you really trying to accomplish with your piles here, so to speak? So one of the things today is concern about running out of money in the future and making sure that the money is there to to provide an income for as long as the individual is around, whether it's there based upon their life or joint life of the spouse. So based upon that last point up there, the annuity contract is really, in today's world, one of the only instruments, one of a very few number of instruments available today that will provide that guaranteed lifetime income, kind of as a Social Security supplement or a pension supplement to add on in addition to your income. So it's an interesting instrument to explore, and we're just trying to compare the different features of these available instruments.
Okay, real quick, we're coming up on a break. I want to do one more before we go to the break, and this goes to a point we were doing a show on this a few weeks ago. Is the investment free of expenses such as surrender charges, brokerage commissions, or interest penalties after 5 years? Stan?
Well, on a certificate of deposit, maybe. I mean, you could, sometimes you can move out of the certificate of deposit based on circumstances without incurring the fee that the bank would impose. If it's a 5-year CD and you want to cash it in after 2, there's normally a fee where a loss of interest. On a tax-free bond or a mutual fund, there might be an acquisition charge or a surrender charge. And if it's an individual bond, if you don't hold it to maturity, you could get a lesser figure for that, especially in today's environment, and the same thing with a corporate bond. With a deferred annuity, they have certain periods of time, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Once you hold that particular piece of paper for that period of time, then there should be no cost to go in, there should be no cost going out, and you should be able to have all the money available at the end of a specific period of time, whether it's 3, 5, 7, 10, depending on the particular program, particular contract.
Okay, we have more to talk about here on the show. It's Molotsky on Money. Every week we're here at this time discussing a variety of issues. Tonight we're talking about comparison of investment features. And yes, we have more to talk about here on the show. Stay with us. With Stan and Lee Molotsky, I'm your host, John DeMasi. Coming back, more Molotsky on Money after these words.
Do you know what your risk tolerance is when it comes to your investments? Do you know exactly what you have in your portfolio? The SHM Financial Group have developed a very important program called a financial stress test. It's simple, quick, and can help you in your future financial plans. Contact the SHM Financial Group to schedule it. Offices in Collingswood, Voorhees, and Lakehurst, New Jersey. Call 1-800-MONEY-SHM. That's 1-800-666-3974. Call us to discuss the reverse mortgage concept. If you should decide to proceed, you're required to go through a 60-minute phone or office interview. We will provide you with a list of HUD counselors you can call who will provide you with the counseling. Call us at 1-855-HUD-REVERSE. That's 1-855-483-7383.
Welcome back to Molotsky on Money with Stan and Lee Molotsky. I'm your host, John DeMasi. Tonight, we are discussing comparison of investment features. There are a lot of comparisons, there are a lot of features, and that's why we do this show, to try to help you sort it all out. And of course, that's where Stan and Lee Molotsky come in, to try to help you sort it all out. That's where you really earn your money, right?
Exactly, and not only that, I mean, these things that are up there, the certificate of deposit, the tax-free bond, the corporate bond, and the deferred annuity, sometimes for some people, they should have none of those. They should only be 100% in the stock market. There are people that should only do that. So, and again, that's a whole different show that we'll talk about, the difference between mutual funds and ETFs and money management and hedge funds and all those kinds of things, which is a whole different discussion, tying it into these things that we're talking about tonight.
One of the things that was up there on the last slide, it said, is everything available after 5 years? Well, there are certain provisions in certain of the contracts that maybe it's an 8 or 10 year contract. There are certain bailout provisions available sometimes where if interest rates do a certain thing and they drop to a certain level, the individual client is free to move on. Or after a 5 year period, at the end of 5 years, even though it might be an 8 or 10 year contract, you're free to go. It's kind of like renting an apartment for 8 years, but in the 4th year, if you're not happy,
you could just go.
For a certain period of time, so by renting that apartment for a little bit more than it would be if you went year to year,
you have that bailout.
You have that bailout provision.
So everything has, and basically what we were trying to do is give them a broad overview.
Sure.
But there are little provisions in each thing that may be an exception.
Absolutely.
Is that the best way to say it?
Absolutely correct.
Again, that's why it's really, really important not to address necessarily these individual features, but really to sit down with the individual, take a half an hour, take 45 minutes, and kind of understand what it is that they're really trying to accomplish. Lift up the hood, as we say, over and over, and kind of drill down as to what their really main objective is, and then tailor something towards their needs.
When was the last time you lifted up the hood on your car?
Unfortunately,
a long time ago.
Actually, unfortunately, somewhat recently. I'll tell you why.
Right.
Yes.
We have some questions here from folks.
I didn't know what I was looking at.
Right.
But
of course you did. But when it's financial, you look under the hood. We have some questions here from folks, and again, we try to take the best of that come in as a result of people watching our show. Here's a question from Joe in Toms River. He says, I've always heard and have been told that a diversified portfolio is best. I've reviewed my investments, and it appears that I have about 30% bonds, 40% stocks, and 30% cash. Is this the proper allocation? I'm 82 and am concerned about running out of money. Stan?
Yes, it is, but no, it isn't, because we don't know the specifics of that particular person. Conceptually, that's an excellent balance to have at that particular person's age, to have a mixture of different things, and especially that amount in cash to take advantage of different emergencies and things that may present themselves. But again, it depends on the amount. It depends on, like Lee states constantly, what is this money for? Is it for you and your spouse, or is it for your children or grandchildren? And then those monies can be allocated and allotted in different kinds of things.
You don't know, Lee, you don't know which bonds or which stocks.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was
So
just
that
gonna say,
you would need to know, right?
I would throw a little caution to the wind in the bond arena at the moment, as we've seen a significant movement, 50% movement in the last 2 to 3 months in the bond arena from an interest rate standpoint. So that individual who's 82 might have seen some slight deterioration in the value of that bond portfolio percentage.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not. Again,
Because it could be short-term bonds.
yeah, maybe
So-
short-term. So,
Yeah, so you
again,
don't, you really have to go under the hood.
Again,
like you said.
throwing caution to the wind is explaining to that individual that if interest rates rise over the next 3 to 5 years, he may see or will see a deterioration in that bond portfolio. Depending upon how much of a deterioration he'll see is based upon the length and
Exactly.
the risk of the bond portfolio. So it's really important to do an analysis for him to see the beta and the risk and the length of maturity of those bonds.
But generally speaking, that mixture
Was
good.
Okay,
Was good.
all right. We have another question here, which we want to try to get to before we leave you tonight. This is Mildred in Northfield, New Jersey. She says, my late husband always told me cash is king. I've always followed that philosophy and now have most of my money in a money market fund, so it's liquid. I'm 67 and a widow and have about $400,000 in that account. I'm afraid of doing anything else. What do you think? Lee? Stan? Either one can answer.
Well, one, I would say if you're comfortable there and you're okay with earning almost nothing on your money, okay. One of the other shows we had talked about inflation. So Mildred's falling a little bit behind from an inflationary standpoint, but her comfort, I think, is probably number 1, 2, and 3 in her mind. So if she's comfortable there, I'm okay with that, but there are better ways to approach it. Maybe not having 400 in cash reserve, maybe having 150 or 200 in cash reserve, and doing a laddering approach with the other 200,000.
That's the key. I mean, her problem is if she's cautious and concerned, she has too much in one account because it's not FDIC insured. There's a limit on the FDIC
There you go.
insurance amount.
Didn't even
So there
think
should
about
be
that.
a couple of different institutions, and like Lee said, and she could buy only FDIC pieces of paper, and like Lee said, ladder them to do different kinds of things to give her a better return than she's getting, which is almost nothing in a money market.
Strategically, have a bit of a game plan instead of just sitting
There's
on.
no game plan here. It looks
No.
like
Well,
the
she-
husband said, keep cash, and she's got cash.
Well, then that's what she's, leaning on, and she may not even know of the different alternatives that are out there, and that's would be our job to present those kinds of things for her, and then her job is to see if it makes sense and then go ahead and do
Well,
it.
whatever the questions, contact Stan or Lee. They'll be happy to help you. And with that, we're going to put the wraps on another edition of Molotsky on Money. Don't forget, you want to talk to Stan or Lee or any member of the team at the SHM Financial Group. You can call them, email them, or certainly go on the website. For Stan and Lee Molotsky, I'm your host, John DeMasi. Thanks for watching. Oh, good night, Jenna. Good night, Alexa. We'll talk to you next time right here on Molotsky on Money. Take care.
Throughout our working years, we accumulate as many retirement nest eggs as possible. The problem is, not much attention is given to the color of the eggs. Do you know how much of your assets should be allocated to each color? At our firm, we have a system that helps you allocate your retirement nest eggs correctly. We have a simple way for you to group your retirement assets into red, yellow, and green money. Give us a call today and we will help you sort and label your retirement nest eggs, giving you a clear picture of the color of your retirement.
Call us to discuss the reverse mortgage concept. If you should decide to proceed, you're required to go through a 60-minute phone or office interview. We will provide you with a list of HUD counselors you can call who will provide you with the counseling. Call us at 1-855-HUD-REVERSE. That's 1-855-483-7383.
done if there's,
Sure, that's fine.
you know, because if we start talking about something and then
The only